Well, hello. Today I have a very special guest, Enrico Fales, a brother in the mystery, somebody that I've known for the past 20 years. And so Enrico has been a magician for over 40 years, and he has mainly practiced the Telemi Golden Dawn system.
Yeah.
And he has used his magical practice and occult study as a tool for sobriety. And today we're going to dive into that journey and get more information and share with our audience all these amazing tools that could potentially, hopefully, help them in their journey. Welcome, Enrico.
Thank
It's so
you.
good to have you here.
Thank you very much.
Did I miss anything in the introduction?
Well, let's specify that I've been practicing magic for about 44 years and I've been sober for 24. So, magic was something I was into before I got sober, and it was something that I availed myself of once that time came around.
Awesome. That's amazing. I'm very excited about this. Actually, we've been trying to do this interview for a long
Yeah.
time.
Yeah, I didn't want it to sound like I'm using magic exclusively for staying sober or
Right, right.
uh,
So it's like multiple uses.
it
You're
was
maximizing on the potential, I guess,
yeah, yeah.
of magic to improve the life. So I wanted to start first with a little bit of a background story. So if you can share a little bit about your life before sobriety, so what role did alcohol play in your life before, and when did you realize you needed to make a change?
Yeah, okay. Well, let's see. I guess I'm a hedonist by nature.
We all are.
Hence my gravitation toward thelemic magic and Crowley, right? And it was after a long and colorful history of drug use. It was eventually alcohol, ultimately alcohol, that I really had a problem with, because I think the last 3 or 4 years that I was drinking, I hadn't really done any other drugs. It was almost exclusively alcohol at that point,
Mm-hmm.
because a lot of other stuff I'd tapered off on, and it was really alcohol, the legal one, that I had that was problematic. The last 3 4 years I was drinking. Even my magical practices fell by the wayside,
Mm-hmm.
and I kept reading and studying, but and I don't regret, like, the fact that my magical practices weren't really happening those last 3 or 4 years, where, let's say, I spent half my time drinking myself into a stupor and the other half kind of like working and recovering, recovering from that,
Mm-hmm.
because I kind of knew subconsciously that I was in no shape to truly practice magic, so I had put the brakes on it at that point.
Mm-hmm.
Uh,
So it had to do with like your inability to dedicate yourself spiritually to your path that made you. It was like a wake up call, or
the wake up call came from finally running into consequences I couldn't ignore. Back in January of 2000, I had a day where I went on a binge, and I got I ended up getting falling down drunk in single digit temperatures,
oh
and
wow.
I got up the next morning and found my hands were hurting like hell, and I had frostbite.
And
So
that was like the wake up call. So what was the next step after that? Was it Alcoholics
um,
Anonymous, or like
it was a few weeks of rehab. I was in a rehab in Arizona for like 5 weeks.
hmm
Um,
Can you
and
tell us a little bit for people who maybe can't afford the rehab or don't know about it, or are maybe questioning it? What does that look like? Like, what did that experience look like?
um, I was in one of the more progressive rehabs in the country. It was a place out in Arizona, and it was, to tell you the truth, it's not an experience I really recommend to
Okay.
people. I think that what passes for rehabilitation for addiction is they take damaged individuals and they attempt to really fix them instead of heal them, you know. And there's a lot of coercion and generally trying to skull fuck you into compliance.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Interesting. Okay. But it included like talk therapy.
It was
and
talk
kind of-
therapy. It was experiential therapy.
Was there like disciplinary like time you have to get up and go to bed? Was it like did they organize your days?
It wasn't quite that structured. As I said, it was a fairly progressive place, but the fact that it was based on the 12 steps, which in and of itself is not really a model based on a school of therapy. It was that schools of therapy adapted the 12 steps into what they do.
Mm-hmm. And then, so you're mentioning 12 steps. Are you referring to the same 12 steps that are in the Alcoholics Anonymous?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay. And
Yeah,
did
most rehabs, I'd say like
Okay.
well over 90% of all inpatient treatment centers use the 12 steps as their model.
Okay. And what about your journey with the AA?
With
Did
AA,
you-
not the AA.
Yeah. Alcoholic Anonymous. That's why I specified because there is a different AA.
Yeah.
Again, to So yeah, Alcoholic Anonymous. What was your like? Did you approach them? Did you spend some time with them?
Oh yeah, yeah. Because the rehab I went to was primarily 12-step.
Right.
I continued with AA after I came home from rehab. It was and those meetings are available all over the city, right?
Mhm.
So
All over the country too.
yeah,
right?
all
Mhm.
over the country, and so they're extremely prevalent. So what I did was I told myself, okay, I would do this for a year, and then decide whether I wanted to continue with this with the 12-step program.
Mhm.
And I did it every day. I was going to these meetings. What I did like about one thing I was doing was that I would do these morning meetings on weekdays, like 5 days a week, Monday through Friday. There was this one meeting in my neighborhood that met at 7 a.m. And these were all people who would go to these meetings, go to this meeting before going off to work. And what was great about that meeting was that you had people who had that level of motivation and commitment to
Takes
get up,
discipline.
Yeah, and actually like sit in these meetings for an hour or maybe a little more than an hour and be there by 7 a.m. before going off to work.
Right.
And so there was something about that wasn't specifically about the 12 steps.
It's like a mentality of people
Yeah,
that came to those meetings
there's
specifically.
there was a level of energy and motivation that I could align with and appreciate in that sense.
So at what point did you figure, like, so you said there's some things you liked and some things you disliked about the program.
I think that the program encourages people to cultivate a certain self-awareness, and I like that part of it. There's a cultivation of self-awareness. There's a cultivation of personal accountability, but where they tell you in the first step you would have to admit you're powerless over alcohol or drugs or whatever substance or activity, because the 12 steps aren't just applied to alcohol. They apply to drugs, gambling, sex. There's all kinds of...
Oh yeah, I want to just insert this. Like, we are all addicts. We're all addicts. You're addict, I'm addict. It's just a matter of like what we're addicted to. You know, some of us it's TV and like endlessly binge watching shows, or food, or sex, like Enrico said. So we all have, this is like a very human impulse, you know, to reach for something.
The impulse to just compulsive behavior and patterned behavior. That's and any and everyone does fall into those patterns. where you're just acting automatically without really being, I guess, mindful of it.
And from that perspective, this talk is really relevant to all of us because we all struggle with impulsive, compulsive behavior.
Yeah.
So, so I'm sorry I interrupted you. So we're talking about what you liked and what you disliked. So if you want to go back to that.
Yeah. What I was saying was that they encourage you to cultivate a certain self-awareness and a lot of personal accountability. But where that first step is where you have to admit to being powerless over alcohol, drugs, whatever. And they encourage personal accountability while discouraging personal agency. So you admit to being powerless, but you're not encouraged to cultivate personal power within yourself.
And that's obviously, so that didn't work for you, that model. However, I do want to point out that you did it for a year, right?
Yeah, I did it for a year.
So you were able to still extract helpful things from it, even though there were parts that didn't. And that's really good because we don't always agree or resonate with things in the world that exist. But that doesn't mean we have to discount them altogether. So we can extract what works and then let go of what doesn't work. So that's kind of a helpful hint. So then obviously, at what point did you decide to take things into your own hands in terms of your sobriety?
I was even when I was doing the 12-step program, I was pretty self-directed. I think I had a sponsor like the first month that I was going to these meetings, and that guy moved away. And
your sponsor?
Yeah, he moved away. He left New York because of work, and then I just didn't get another sponsor. You know,
you became your own sponsor.
Pretty much. I was just self-directed, and for me, it was 5 days a week. I would go to these morning meetings, and on weekends, I would try other meetings around town, and that made it fun in a way.
Yeah.
Because I would on a Saturday or Sunday, I'd drop into different meetings that were that happened mostly in Lower Manhattan. Some in Brooklyn, but there was.
Feel like, sorry to interrupt, community aspect.
The community aspect.
Did that help?
I met some genuinely good people in there, and you can also meet some people who are just very, they're very locked into the program, and they want to be, and they try to exert their authority or whatever, their imagined authority over other people in the program, especially if they act like sponsors.
But it's also like I can see how
they can.
It can give people a sense of control.
Yeah.
Over there. So that's I can
yeah. I mean, if I was at my least charitable, I can say about this program that it's fear-based, control-oriented, and inherently authoritarian.
And what would be the positive aspect?
The positive aspect is that you can, if you really apply the discipline of the meetings and the methodology, you can get something out of it. And just that basic that primary directive of don't pick up, don't you know what you're here to do and not to do, and the thing is, if you're here because you have a problem, drugs, alcohol, whatever else, you don't engage in that activity, and that that's what you're there for.
I also have a question. So, like a lot of people, I know a lot of brilliant people in my life who, had challenges with substance abuse and addiction. And some people that I know closely, there is like often kind of guilt and shame associated with this. And that's something in my mind, you know, being a part of community where like everybody struggles with the same thing can help alleviate some of that guilt and shame and bring about self-acceptance. Did that happen for you, or?
Yeah, it did, because I'd say that well, the guilt and shame is probably the foundation of your self-destructive behavior.
I agree with that, 100%. It's like
So,
it's like a kind of a bottomless pit. It's like spiraling. I was actually sorry to interrupt. Actually, why don't you finish your thing and then I'll.
guilt and shame is the foundation of the self-destructive behavior that you're going to engage in,
I
that
agree.
that will ultimately bring you to the door of, let's say, AA meetings or other recovery programs, which I did engage in after I left AA. There was an alternate program that I engaged in called SMART, self-management and recovery training.
So that was like a stepping stone between the AA and your kind of.
No. Well, the thing is that when I came home from rehab, I think I started practicing magic like about a week after that, because it coincided. Yeah, I came back home from rehab on March 13th of 2000, and the following weekend, I think, was spring equinox, and I did a spring equinox ritual that at that point to just signal my return to magical practice.
That's awesome. Yeah. So what I was gonna say is, because you know I had people who were close in my life who struggled with this, and I witnessed it, and I realized one thing about one friend in particular, that you know he almost has this like circular kind of repetitive pattern of, you know, he would get this like voice in his head that would say, oh, it's just, you know, it's okay, I can just take a little bit, it won't be, you know, it's like, so there's this voice that comes up, he acts on it, then he goes through the whole kind of, you know, he'll spend a week using, you know, and then the withdrawal symptoms happen, then he stops, then the withdrawal symptoms, then the self-loathing and the kind of self-hatred and shame. And it always became very clear to me that like all of that guilt and shame and beating oneself up was actually kind of setting the stage for him to go back and use again. You know, and that's I'm glad you mentioned this, because like that's exactly what I observed, and you're communicating that's like part of that.
Yeah, fortunately that it didn't happen for me that way, because I have not relapsed. I mean, my last drinking binge was my last drinking binge.
Wow.
And it was I keep telling myself that I was just lucky that it wasn't my final drinking binge.
Yeah, we're all lucky to have you here
and
with
the thing
us.
is, because as I said, I felt I ran into consequences I couldn't ignore, I kept paying attention to those consequences. And
How did you? So I'm gonna kind of get in there. My NLP training is like, how did you represent like? So after, you know, the rehab and everything, I would guess that you had the urge still to kind of like, did you feel the urges to like go back to it, right? But you
no,
just didn't respond.
no, I didn't. I really had no urges, because what I really wanted to do was feel better and know that I was feeling better. I was actually looking at the quality of my life when, you know, in those early days that that I'd quit, and it helped me to stay quit. Something else helped me to stay quit. That feeling of that uplifted feeling that sometimes made me wonder, why didn't I do this 10 or 15 years before? And I remember a guy at a meeting telling me, "Oh no, no, you can't think that way. You can't do that." And it was just like, "Well, yeah, actually I can."
Yeah, of course. But
Because
why
it
would
was
you?
like that regret over not having done
Uh,
it sooner um, helped to motivate me to stay quit.
mm-hmm.
And just the fact that I was feeling better and I stayed with that feeling.
Mm-hmm. I feel like I want to dig a little deeper here because I know a lot of people who are struggling with this uh, don't have this experience of like, oh, I just don't have the urge anymore.
Right. No, no,
So
that's pretty atypical.
yeah, so I'm wondering like, what is I want to like dig deeper into. There was some kind of resolve. There was some tipping point that like totally kind of switched you, and maybe there is not clear answer. Maybe we can extract it over the
Well,
course.
I'll dial back to having experienced frostbite. Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. My
Mhm.
last drinking binge happened on the what was a really cold day. It was January 21st, 2000, and it was a Friday. I kind of like drank all day, and by the evening, I was just like I don't remember anything after 11 p.m. It was like a blackout drunk,
Mhm.
and I got up the next morning, and my fingers hurt like hell, and there were fluid deposits. I got myself up to an emergency room, and they checked me in for severe frostbite. I spent 9 days in the hospital getting pumped up full of heparin to get the blood circulating back in my fingers. And
Wow.
I spent 8 of those days wondering whether I'd be walking out of there with all of my fingers.
Right.
So,
Wow.
almost ending up maimed, let alone, let alone uh, cheating death,
Mhm.
because I don't remember getting home. I could have
Mhm.
easily just like been outside or frozen to death
Mhm.
or, fallen on some train tracks.
Yeah. So it seems like I know one thing that we studied in NLP. They teach that there are two ways to create change. One is using the pain, kind of the risk of pain, and the other one is the prospect for something really positive. So
Yeah.
it's either using kind of the negative route or well, I'm gonna say negative route, but like avoiding pain or wanting to attract something
Well,
positive. And it seems like your pain aspect was really you
yeah,
had a scare because you could
yeah,
have. That was
yeah.
like.
There was also another factor, and this was something that happened when I was in rehab. Being told that I was trying to do my recovery my own way, and I thought, well, certainly on my own terms. And I was told that, well, if you try to do it on your own way or on your own terms, you're just going to die. I was. They tried to drill it into me that it was impossible for
Mm-hmm.
me to
Yeah, well,
do
that's
this
not
on my own
right. That's
terms,
not true.
and I wanted to prove to myself that 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 was the case, that I could do
Mm-hmm.
this on my own terms, and I ended up, not showing them, not proving it to them, but proving to myself
Right.
that no, I was right. I could do this on my own
Mm-hmm.
terms.
Mm-hmm. And I mean, it's like everybody's different. We all have different skills and capacities and difficulties. So for some people need that rigorous system that AA offers,
Yeah,
and there is another option for those who want something else. So
yeah,
it's like not good or bad. It's just everybody, whatever works, go for it, right? But I really like that you made it your own, and I want to dive now into this point of turning to magic and spirituality to fuel your sobriety.
yeah. Well, it wasn't just an idea that I got when I came back from rehab. It was something that I was planning on doing
Mm-hmm.
as part of my recovery. It
Mm-hmm.
was like, yeah, now you can start practicing magic again, and let's see if you can use that, toward this purpose.
So I have a question. Did you
Yeah.
do specific practices and rituals as an antidote to kind of or like, you know, to drinking, or a way to deal with your emotions, or was it more kind of
It was a little more general than that.
okay.
Yeah. I revisited a few sources in the form of like 3 or 4 books. Actually, four
Three or four,
books.
oh, books. Uh-huh. Okay, what are
Yeah.
those books?
There was Modern Magic by Donald Michael Kraig.
I have it right there.
Yeah.
It's a classic.
So I had done that course. I'd used that course book back in like 1988, 1989, and I went through the whole course within. I spent a year going through the course in that book. I mean, I'd already been into magic by that point. By the time the first edition of that book came around, I'd already been practicing magic for about 7 or 8 years. So, but I did remember how how doing that course really reinforced and upped my game magically. So that was like the first book that I decided on using and to apply, not so much toward this purpose, but as part of my journey going ahead, both in newfound sobriety and picking up on magical practices again.
So would you say that it was kind of like, you know, in Buddhism we have this concept of like going to refuge. When things are difficult, we go to refuge to certain things. So for those of us who, you know, struggle with addiction, we might have, or we all find a way to self-medicate, binge behaviors, you know, things of that nature. And so in Buddhism, there is this idea when you take refuge, when you officially become a Buddhist, you take vows that you take refuge in the spiritual teacher, which is the Buddha, the spiritual teachings, which are the vehicle which can deliver you into enlightenment, and the spiritual community. So do you think that, you know, these magical practices and things became kind of like your new refuge?
Yeah, to that extent, yeah. And but I wasn't working with any groups at that point. I was not isolating, but I was flying solo. I was doing I started up on the modern magic course, Don Craig's modern magic course, and I had added to that, and I was simultaneously doing using Israel Regardie's 1-year manual course book. I also availed myself of Christopher Hyatt's Undoing Yourself.
Oh wow! Okay,
and,
I haven't read that book. Maybe you can.
Yeah, I mean, this was like 6 months into the modern magic and 1-year manual course. I added to that Chris Hyatt's Undoing Yourself, it's a lot of like self-exploratory and physical techniques that you use to release energy in your body and your mind, and that I started adding to it like 6 months into so it was around fall equinox that I added Chris Hyatt's Undoing Yourself program in there.
So is that book, it has to do with like working with yourself energetically?
Yeah, and trying to unravel a great deal of tension that you've accumulated over the years from all kinds of past experience. Not all of it traumatic, you know, just experience that has accumulated a lot of energy that causes tension just because, not because it's traumatic, but because it just got stale.
Yeah. Actually, something interesting I want to point out, that in the Eastern system, they talk a lot about the energy body. I'm actually posting a lot this month and the next few months. I'll be posting a lot about that. But I want to bring it up because the basis of all physical and mental ailments, according to Eastern traditions, are in the subtle body.
Yeah.
That means that we can actually, I mean, the three are all interconnected, like our mind, our body, and then the light body, which is like the chakra systems and so forth. They're all interconnected, right? So if you work on one, you will automatically affect the others. But that's very interesting because, you know, I like that you use the kind of energetic way to process all that stuff. Which a lot of times we use talk therapy to deal with trauma and things, but
Yeah.
this is like a more visceral, it's both visceral way and energetic way to just like, you know, you get out of your head. So it's not about like conceptual stuff. You're just kind of releasing it right on the spot. So
Yeah.
that's very cool.
Yeah, well, you know, I mentioned Israel Regardie
Yeah.
because of the 1 year manual, and
I actually am not familiar with that book. Can you tell us a little bit
the
more?
1 year manual is actually subtitled 12 Steps to Spiritual
Oh,
Enlightenment.
that's too funny. I
So,
love that.
But it's a series of, let's say, 12 different physical and meditational exercises, and the developing of the will. There are 2 rituals in there.
Wow.
There's the middle pillar and the rose cross ritual, and so it's a year-long course. And but Regardie stressed that the course that he outlined in that book, and it's a slim volume, that it would probably, if you really applied it, it would probably take a bit more than a year.
Right. Well, you can also rinse and repeat.
Yeah.
You could always
yeah.
do that. That's
And
yeah.
I do have to add that I went and started I revisited the big Magick book of Crowley's, you know, Liber. Yeah, I mean that was a huge study guide for me, because I was studying that and applying a lot of the rituals that were in there, along with, on top of, the modern magic course and the 1 year manual course. So I was front loading in a big way.
Okay, so one thing I'm noticing here is that what you did is you took kind of all of yourself and you got really kind of invested, and you know, we got very passionate about this thing, and you reapplied. And this is, it makes me think of like alchemical transmutation.
Yeah.
So you took like all the kind of I don't know, pain or what's the word, like a desire or impulses, all of these things, and you took the energy from that and put it into your work.
Yeah.
And
yeah. I'll also point out that by the time I'd quit drinking, I'd already been into magic for quite some time.
Right.
So for me to take from all these different sources and do all these courses concurrently was for me not a stretch, because I had prior experience. You know, I wasn't new to magical practice, and I picked like different courses that would actually integrate with each other, and would and that I could use simultaneously. I mean, it was well mixed and matched. It wasn't like, you know, I was doing thelemic magic here and then like going into like sweat lodges and shamanism over here, and just like, well, I mean there's eclectic and there's sloppy.
Yeah, I want to say that there is something to be said. The fact that you had history working with the magical system for so long gives you enough information to be able to come in and kind of rearrange things. And this is really important point. Like for me, I was able to do the same, in a sense of like you become a part of the tradition and you learn things the way they're taught.
Yeah.
You know, and then when you've gotten like a lot of experience and you really understand the system, then you can come in and adjust things in a way that's like an educated change, right? So on one hand, I see that kind of, that's one of the reasons I would say you're very successful at this. And another thing, which now escapes me, I had two things that came through. Went away. It's okay. We'll come back if necessary. But there was like another point I was going to make. about this. Ugh, okay, doesn't matter. We move on. Um,
my adherence to the Thelemic tradition, because I do consider myself a Thelemite, had to come in there at some point. So I was doing the Crowley's reworkings of the pentagram rituals and the hexagram ritual. I was and at 6 months into my doing the modern magic course, I added Liber.
Can you tell people? Some people may not know what
Liber
is.
is the bornless ritual, which actually it was Crowley's reworking of a ritual that first appeared in the Greco-magical papyrus, and it's the ritual for the invocation of the holy guardian angel or the higher self, and that's another way that it kind of links up with that directive in 12-step programs where you're actually cultivating a relationship with a higher power. So that fell right in line with that. Your the HGA.
Yeah, I remember the point I was gonna make, and that's what I noticed, and this is really huge. You use the magic for to really dive into yourself and to kind of reconstruct stuff to get to know yourself more deeply, which we know of the age-old axiom, know thyself, as being fundamental. And this was it's kind of like you became your own therapist in a way. So you put yourself through these systems and you totally applied yourself, but the entire kind of the impulse there was deep restructuring of the kind of inner landscape of yourself. Because, and I point this out because a lot of people who do magic resort to magic primarily to control external things in their life, or to bring money, or to bring this or to bring that. But actually I want to emphasize that your approach in this context had everything to do with working on yourself.
Yeah. I mean, it's primarily a theurgical approach, and the Golden Dawn and the Thelemic systems, which for me are inexorably linked, do place an emphasis more on theurgy than on thaumaturgy.
Yeah.
And it's it's really about personal.
The terms, just because maybe not everybody is.
Theurgy is magic that's done for personal development and for cultivating a link with one's divine origins. Thaumaturgy is magic that's done for temporal and earthbound results. Weather magic is thaumaturgy. Love spells are thaumaturgy. Doing spell work so you can get that job that you're that you're going for is thaumaturgy. And I don't have a problem with using thaumaturgy, especially if it's in the service of theurgical.
That's my point too. Yeah, I agree with that.
Because if you're chasing after that, if you're chasing after some gainful employment, so that you can actually create an environment for yourself that is going to make it possible for you to pursue your higher purpose. Because hey, I mean, if you're not if you're wondering about paying your rent and your taxes and dealing with crippling debt, it's not going to be too easy for you to do those path workings up
Right,
to
right, right.
those
I
Kabbalistic path
right.
workings up to the higher planes.
And I also think like doing thaumaturgic work in the service of like, growing your highest potential is kind of has a different flavor, much different flavor than like, making the neighbor's cow die. What is that from like the Middle Ages? There was this concept of like you can make your neighbor's cow die out of spite or jealousy, or
Yeah.
this kind of concept of like forcing your will on others, like. But I also want to emphasize here that a lot of times, and I think it's the same kind of trap that we fall into when we turn to external things to find comfort, right? That's like always two-edged sword, because we can't always, magic or not, we can't always control the external. So what happens then, when we're out of control? We want to get to a point where we can manage ourselves, as you did, right? And you use magic to bring about support, but if things don't work out, if you do what Enrico does, you're gonna be fine, right? You're gonna have a kind of you build the foundation. But I mean, no, you can navigate those waters, right? So it's like I think it's very problematic to use magic to like just fulfill all your desires, because desire is a bottomless pit. It's like the more you get, the more you want. So there is like this kind of
And that's
element.
that's fundamental to addiction.
Exactly.
The bottomless pit of desire.
That's
is
exactly my
fundamental
point
to
too, right? So we want to
addiction.
be careful, and sometimes we get ordeals for a reason. Like ordeals help us grow. So anyway, so I just wanted to point that out, because I saw that connection between like some ways of using thaumaturgy, like aspect of magic, and addiction. So that's a really good point. Okay, so then those three books. Any other books that you want to highlight?
There was Psychic Self-Defense, not
The
the Unfortunates
not
book,
The
but
Unfortunate.
there's a Llewellyn's Practical Guide to Psychic Self-Defense by Melita Denning and Osborne Phillips.
Someone mentioned it to me the other day.
Which is a more systematic course book. The Unfortunates book is a classic, but it's less of an instruction manual than Denning and Phillips's is. Yeah, Denning and Phillips put out a more solid course book. Although Dion Fortune's insights on psychic self-defense are invaluable.
I also so I want to mention all these books and titles and things. I'm gonna put them, so don't worry, they're gonna be in the description. And there was, of course,
a lot of Crowley's materials, especially like Liber Abba, book, the big book 4, Gems from the Equinox.
Gems from the Equinox, there's a lot of like, there is a bhakti yoga aspect.
Yeah,
so there's a lot
Gems from the Equinox was like, was actually compiled and edited by Regardie. What he did was he extrapolated all the magical and yoga teachings from the Equinox, from all 10 volumes of the Equinox, or most of those, and he condensed them into one convenient volume. So sex magic, yoga, and magical practices, all of those essential practices are in that book, and that's why that's a really good course book. So I should emphasize that the modern magic course wasn't exclusively followed, although I was thorough about doing everything in that course book. It wasn't what I did exclusively, and I started adding to it 6 months into the process, and so it was Gems from the Equinox, it was the Liber Abba.
So it's a mixture of, I would say, would you say, is it correct if I said it was a mixture of like the bhakti element, the devotional? Did you have that, like when you read holy books, is it something that really...
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the bhakti element, there is the kind of discipline techniques with I don't know if you did like middle pillar, LBRP, middle pillar, so
Yeah,
like daily
yeah,
ritual.
yeah. I mean, for me, yeah. Well, the devotionals are a discipline in themselves, but
Right.
my personal definition of magic is that it is a transformative discipline.
Mm-hmm.
Aleister Crowley had defined magic as the art and science of causing change to occur
Occurring
in
conformity
conformity
with
with
will.
will. And that's a very simple, very elegant, and very broad definition.
Yeah.
And I knew I had to come up with a more personal definition. And that was okay, magic is a discipline that takes a person through a process of transformative development by means of ritual, meditation, divination, spellcraft,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
uh, those four primary tools,
Mm-hmm.
and of course, study and study and study.
Yeah.
In short, I consider magic a transformative discipline.
Right. I like that a lot because the point is instead of fixating on bringing about change in this person or in the weather, we're really focusing on bringing change inside. And when we change inside, automatically
Yeah,
our perception of everything
yeah,
changes, and that's the real power. So
yeah,
that's really cool. And I want to say,
and
like, you have a lot of passion for this stuff. It's just so
yeah,
inspiring to
thanks.
see, and I love that, and I think that's a big key, like really allowing yourself to develop passion for something and then putting all of your kind of energy into that. So what were you going to say? I interrupted.
Yeah, and the term transformative discipline doesn't stray at all from, let's say, Crowley's definition. In fact, yeah, I see it as a condensed form of
Right.
Crowley's definition
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
uh, the ideas of will and change are like right in there in transformation and discipline.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree. 100%. Because discipline, actually, it's so funny. I was thinking, for a lot of people, discipline feels like bondage, but actually, discipline releases us from bondage of impulsive, compulsive habits. We're all kind of like, we're all burdened by certain impulses,
Yeah, well,
and that's
paradoxically, it's like a key to liberation. Discipline is a method to liberate yourself.
right, exactly, 100%. So let's see. I have a little list of questions here, which we just kind of was like a guideline. I feel like we covered a lot. Um, so yeah, so you said you had like no cravings or moments of weakness, but like if you had, I'm sure we all have ordeals. So when things got hard, like let's say something would happen, I don't know, bad news or something didn't work out. Well, was your method to just like go back to your practice, or or deal with it magically, or how
Yeah,
did you?
let's say difficulties I've encountered in the last, well, since I quit drinking. It's, my day-to-day life hasn't been all that difficult in terms of, well, I mean, it's like I've managed to. I've managed to keep a roof over my head, and my fondness for indoor plumbing hasn't been hasn't been interrupted. I've also been in good health. Um, Problems that might arise were, my problems. I gotta say that problems that I might encounter don't stem from things I do, but they stem from not doing things.
That's very interesting.
It's the things that I don't do that
Mm-hmm.
eventually get me, cause problems in my life.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it's like, if if I don't do something, well, then difficulties arise, and I think that has it it being into Thelema compounds that, because that prime directive of do what thou wilt shall be the whole of the law. If you're not doing, that's when problems
Mm-hmm.
start to pile up around you. Because if I'm doing something, if I make an effort, I get results I can live with. If I don't make an effort to do something, well, then there's the consequences.
I
You
really
know?
like this about you, Enrico. You're really all about like taking responsibility for your life entirely, and that's really key to mastery. And I think it's not that Enrico doesn't have problems; it's that he has a certain kind of attitude, where like he doesn't complain about every little thing. He's not complaining about other people doing, which a lot of people do. Like a lot of people, the way they view their problems, they're always blaming somebody else. Oh, it's somebody else who did this to me. And it's like your attitude is just like, it's all up to me, to kind of, I really love that.
Yeah,
Like that's
thanks.
refreshing
And you know
and
what? I've got to say that
empowering.
the program, the AA 12-step program, does encourage that because it does encourage people to engage personal accountability. It just doesn't encourage personal agency. So with personal accountability, I think personal agency should come with that because they're two sides of that
Yeah.
piece of currency.
Yeah, I
They're two
agree with
sides
you.
of that-
I
of
don't
that
want to
same
criticize
coin.
AA in any way because
No.
I'm not, but because I'm like an outsider. But I do agree with that. I have to say, like, kind of intellectually speak, like just rationally, I agree with you. Um, and then um, how did your magical practice change or evolve as you progressed? Because it's like I almost feel like you turn to this to kind of manage your sobriety, but there were multiple gifts that kind of benefits that branched out in every area of your life. It seems.
Yeah.
Do you
Yeah.
feel like you have more self-awareness? Do you feel like
Yeah, self-awareness is a big one there. I think that, and having insights that I mean, self-awareness is is also some people might consider it a curse because you can't lie to yourself anymore. Self-awareness prohibits you from self-deception. I
I
mean,
love that.
you can try to engage in self-deception, or you can you can try to shoehorn in any kind of amount of self-delusion, but it's ultimately not going to work because it's like the more self-aware you are, and I think that self-awareness can come to you can come to some realizations that can scare the shit out of you.
Oh,
Because it's like
100%.
you can, yeah, I mean, you can
Oh, I'm
really
so glad
scare
you mentioned
yourself
that.
when you get
Yeah.
when you become aware of like some things about yourself that and I guess it's popularly referred to as shadow work,
Right. Yeah.
and
Right. I'm so glad you mentioned that because it's like it is. A lot of people are so scared of like, scratching the surface and kind of
yeah.
going within because we have a lot of demons and monsters
Yeah.
inside.
Well, I mean, I'll say that yeah, going back to problems stemming from what I don't do, and if there's something about myself that I become aware of and don't do something about, that's where I run into problems. And I'm not going to say that hasn't happened. You know, and in fact, like if I'm having like uh, problems with personal interactions, I've got to look at like what I'm not addressing about myself to because it'll come off. If I'm not addressing or dealing with some things in my life, that is going to come out in my behavior, and my behavior is going to affect how I interact with people.
Even if it can even happen unconsciously, so the
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
we're not, and often happens that way.
So personal negligence is something that can lead to interpersonal problems.
I 100% agree. Yeah. Yeah, things start within, as within, so without. Like, and that's another thing that like people love to quote that, because it like sounds so cool, and so mystical. But when it comes to like living by those, like taking that as a kind of rule of life, like many people don't want to, they're like, what do you mean? It has nothing to do with me. It's that person over there. It's like, no, it's all interconnected. And I mean, it could be that it's the other person that's the problem, but like how we respond is always up to us. Okay, there was one more thing I was going to ask. What other than the Holy Guardian Angel, what other archetypes, deities, or symbols were very helpful to you in your journey of sobriety?
There were, well, as far as deities were concerned, well, the Thelemic pantheon of Nuit, Hadit, and Rahur Kuit, yeah, developing that or reconnecting with that rapport with Horus, especially, was good, and also female deities like Ma'at, Athena, the Morrigan. I mean,
this is a balance, and Athena had to do with
wisdom and strategy.
Right. Yeah. Oh, nice. Yeah.
Wisdom and strategy, and thinking your way through situations. Athena was Odysseus's matron goddess as he tried to get home. That whole story of the Odyssey. It was like, Athena was always watching over him and helping him guide, navigate through all the situations he encountered trying to get home from the war. Ma'at, Athena, and I also I wanted to cultivate a relationship with Dionysus in sobriety.
I love that. That's
because there was
really
paradoxically
powerful.
It was like, okay, I'm not drinking anymore, so I can't I'm not going to be guzzling wine in your favor, but I'm still very pleasure oriented and very much a hedonist. And the thing is that I realized I kept drinking a long time after I stopped enjoying it, and doing something after you've stopped enjoying it is the opposite of hedonism, and so cultivating like that hedonistic impulse by other means. I wanted to cultivate that relationship with Dionysus without drinking, and to maintain that relationship with Dionysus, and I think it managed. I think I managed to.
I really love that, and this also says a lot about you, because a lot of times when like we have some kind of negative experience associated with something, we take everything that has to do with that thing and we try to demonize it.
Yeah.
And I think that's a problem. And actually, not to mention, because when you demonize something, it's like you're kind of shoving it under a rug, and it will inevitably come back to swallow you.
Yeah.
So it's really cool that you kind of embraced it and found other ways to connect with that. Because I think that's beautiful. It's great. It's such a great example.
Dionysus and Pan and so those deities were definitely a part of what I was trying to do.
So I want to jump into like kind of another question. Did you face any skepticism or judgment from others about your application of magic for sobriety?
Well,
not
so much, because I stuck to the fourth power of the Sphinx.
Oh, good. Good call.
To be silent. So I wasn't hiding things, but I was very private about what I was doing. And the thing is that I think that when you practice magic, I think ideally you're better off not broadcasting what you do.
100%. Zip the lip.
Because otherwise, you're just kind of like walking around and oh, I'm a great magician kind of thing. And you just sort of like keep that under the radar. So
100%.
And with people who were also into magic that I was sharing this this stuff with, the fact that yeah, I quit drinking and I'm applying magic. I picked up my magical practices again, and I'm applying magic toward the end of a successful recovery. Those folks understood what I was doing. So this was something I was only really sharing with other people
Wisely.
who were into magic.
Yeah.
And I didn't tell Joey at the AA meeting that yeah, I'm practicing ritual magic as part of this. No, because it was always on a need to know basis.
I agree so much with that. We do, we see a lot of indiscriminate sharing and just pouring out of really private spiritual things that people do. And a big part of that is like you said, wanting to be seen, wanting to control how others see us, and like, oh, I want to be seen as powerful. And it's like, but the real power is like not needing external validation. Like that's, and like holding that inside of ourselves. So that's very cool.
Yeah, I mean, it's like, somebody's like walking around and being the great magician. It's like, you're walking around with your fly open, really. It's tantamount to that in a way.
Also,
I mean, I'm not above having swagger.
Right. Well, right.
You know me.
Right.
You know me, and you know that I'm not.
We all have persona. We all have. But it's really important, especially when we take something that's sacred to us and spiritual, and we use that to kind of boost our ego in a way. It's not really helpful, because spiritual practice is supposed to reduce aspect of the ego that's problematic. Because ego is not all bad. Just want to make that clear.
No,
there is a positive and negative aspect.
Believe me, I have.
It's ego grasping. That's the problem.
I'm not a stranger to the fact that I have an ego.
Of course, no. We all have ego. I mean, we all have ego. We couldn't be embodied without the ego. But there are aspects of the ego that are like ego grasping. This like kind of that's what creates problem. I don't want to open a can of worms now and get into that, but I have other videos on the subject. So let's jump to this one question. So if somebody watching this is struggling with addiction, what advice would you give them about paving their own way to recovery?
Try to keep in mind the setbacks that your addictions caused and the problems it caused, and try to focus on being able to deal with your problems and solve those problems. I liked what Robert Anton Wilson had to say once about us being a problem-solving species, and the state of the world notwithstanding, that's something that I like. That's something that I like to keep at the forefront. That we are a problem-solving species. I don't know how great how good we are at it right now.
We could do better.
But to keep that at the forefront, and that make it your purpose to deal with and solve your problems, and just cultivate more of an ability to deal with your problems. And and one way of doing that is to look at what kind of problems this has caused for you. Also, listen, in my case, magic was one of the things that I used toward quitting and staying quit. That was for me. This was something that I was already into. Being a magician didn't prevent me from becoming a drunk, but it was certainly there when I had to deal with the problem. So find if you are dealing with an addiction, you probably have other interests too. I mean, none of this is in a vacuum. You probably had interests that superseded and preceded your fall into your tailspin into addiction. I mean, how many musicians have I known in my life who who had to deal with substance abuse? A lot of them doubled down on their in their interest in music and that and found that that was their real passion, and that the drugs and alcohol were incidental to and that they ultimately really had nothing to do with actually playing music. I mean, sex, drugs, rock and roll notwithstanding, we keep the sex there, but it's if you buy into that package, well, just dial it back and look at what you were really interested in. I mean, musicians falling into addiction and self-destructive patterns is just one example. It's that anyone who's fallen into addictive patterns probably has interests outside of substance abuse or surrendering to compulsive behavior. And I think that if you're cultivating some kind of passion, you are not engaging in compulsive behavior, because I think compulsive behavior is just robotic. It's not ecstatic.
I agree, 100%. Yeah. So, what are your goals and aspirations now, both in terms of your magical work and personal life?
Well, to move further along in my magical development, which also includes my membership in a temple. That's there's a degree system that I want to see myself move through.
So this is, just to clarify, Enrico is an initiatory order, and that's what he's referring to here.
Yeah. But there's that, and there's that structured side of the magic I practice, and then there's the less structured personal side, which do complement each other. So it's like, magical pursuits are an open-ended thing. And I think that I don't know what I'm going to encounter down the road, but I want to continue on that journey and continue with it, I guess, successfully in that sense.
So, kind of the repertoire of magic tools that are available for you, and just kind of utilizing them in every area of life to extract more of life and to kind of
I remember when I saved that date that I had as like my first sober day, which was like that day I woke up without any alcohol in my system, which was 2 days after my last drinking binge. Yeah, I had the frostbite and all of that, but I was alcohol free, and that was I wrote down that date and the hour I woke up, and I had an astrologer do a chart.
Rebirth. I love that. That's great.
And so it's
great.
In sobriety I'm an Aquarius or something.
Oh, that's very cool.
I'm a sober Aquarius.
That's really fun.
So there was marking that time, and so I've always, I guess with my with quitting drinking and staying quit, there's always been a magical dimension to that.
So, this leads us.
But the thing is, with people who listen, I'm not recommending that someone who quits drinking should like run and buy up a bunch of books on magic and start practicing. I mean, if you lean in that direction,
Right.
yeah. But you know, it worked in my case because it was something I already had an interest in.
We also want to specify that magic, it's a set of practices and so forth, but there is spiritual philosophy underlying
Yeah,
this tradition. So like whatever spiritual philosophy you're in can be your stepping
yeah,
stone, right? And
yeah.
you can like explore different and
Hmm.
integrate different things.
Yeah, in
but,
my case, it happened to be Western Hermetic magic.
uh, so how do you see magic continuing to support you in your sobriety going forward, like long term?
Um, it's kind of self-generating, you know, as I continue to practice magic and as it the fact of like not drinking and being sober is that like that is in and of itself kind of self-regulating. It's no longer really an issue for me.
Right.
That like I don't wake up on a given morning and think, oh, I'm really going to have to put in, you know, make an effort not to not to pick up, because that's never really been the case for me. Again,
However,
my
if it were the
situation,
case,
if it
what would you?
if it were the case, now this is speculation and imagining on my part.
But I mean, based on
It's
your experience, you know, because there are people who have that.
go
So,
yeah. I mean, work with whatever sobriety program you're applying.
so like
Be it
community and system.
be it 12 step or the 4 points of the SMART program. If you are working with a recovery program, put your energy and your attention in that, because it's something that you will get a lot out of if you put it. Yeah, you'll get out of it what you put into it, and I dare
As with
say,
everything.
you know, as I you know kept drinking a long time after I stopped enjoying it, just like I'm sure that's the case for 99.9% of people who continue with you know addictive patterns. You know, they keep doing things just automatically, even
Right.
though they don't enjoy them anymore. And it's like, you know, we will stick to anything that's familiar, no matter how miserable it makes us,
Right.
rather than explore something new. So, you know, you might find if you're working, you know, if you're working whatever program, and that, yes, that includes 12-step programs, even though I may not, you know, I may not be an advocate of them. You might find something in there that you'll enjoy doing.
Right.
You know,
100%.
you know, you will find some enjoyment. It's like you know, you may not enjoy doing it. You'll enjoy having done it, because you will enjoy the results of your efforts.
I also want to mention, as somebody who works with spiritual archetypes myself, is that, you know, you can, what you were saying, you know, Robert Anton Wilson said that we're kind of problem solving and like, you know, to do something new and to think, you know, to get out of this kind of habit of doing something familiar and like thinking outside of the box, right? Yeah. Sometimes we feel like we can think outside of the box, but one method that I want to share that works for me is like, you know, if you're working in the system of magic, is to let spiritual archetypes help you. So you can kind of invite them into your space, and then you can, you know, throw tarot cards, you know, or channel, do automated writings to get the wisdom of the spiritual archetype, and they will give you, you know, you can. I mean, I want to say you will 100%, but I believe that it was possible for me and for a lot of other people. So that's a possibility.
Also, there's I'd like to mention Crowley's book, Diary of a Drug Fiend.
Oh yeah,
The novel,
yeah, I love
you know, it's not a great novel as far as fiction goes.
I enjoyed it. I read it a long
I
time
enjoyed
ago,
it
but
too.
I enjoyed it. Yeah.
I enjoyed it
enjoyed
because
his writings.
I remember, I mean, because I've read it several times. I read it in my life. I've read it. I read it before I got sober, and I read it a couple of times after I got sober, just to see, what kind of ideas, how the ideas hit me. Now, the essential premise behind the book is really solid in terms of dealing with addiction. It's like, because it gives a very accurate portrait of the problem of addiction, and it proposes a workable solution. It's like, oh yeah,
That's a good call.
you can get, you can conquer addiction by finding and doing your true will. And that's the ultimate takeaway from that book. And it does present itself. It does present the reader, especially if that reader is dealing with substance abuse, with a viable solution, because it definitely it portrays the problem accurately, and once again presents what could be a workable solution.
So that's another book we're going to add to our list.
Yeah.
So if let's say you go back in time to your younger self who's struggling with in the midst of the addiction, what would you tell him?
Okay. I do meditations periodically where I backtrack into my past and look at different experiences that I've had in my past. And I will encounter situations, especially particularly situations like what we've been discussing, my drug experiences, my drinking, and I can connect with the feelings I had about that at the time and the regrets, and thinking, wow, I need to do better. I think I can do better. I know I can do better. And just going back and as my current self into looking at my past self and almost communicating with that past self and saying, yeah, you can do better and you will. And, my future self is kind of like, my past self is kind of like subconsciously linking up with that future self and saying, hey, yeah, look, I know you're out there, and you're just like, so there is a connection with that current self and that past self, and there's a transtemporal communication happening there. So, I mean, it's not as picturesque as like me going back, and it's not as picturesque as me going back in time and like smacking my younger self around and going, yeah, cut that shit out.
That's funny.
It's not that literal, but doing like some meditation of going back to traumatic experience and connecting with the way I felt back then, and saying, and connecting with that voice that was saying, I need to do better, I can do better, and connecting with that and saying, yeah, you can and you will.
That's a very powerful strategy, and it's very similar to like several strategies in neurolinguistic programming. So it's like very cool that you came up with that, and I actually think you should like work it out and write it down as an exercise.
Yeah. Okay.
And
there
make it available to people.
There is a ritual in Kraig's Modern Magic about increasing magical power, and the ritual goes like this: you draw out or write out a sigil. You create a sigil that represents magical power to you. Then you perform the Watchtower ritual, and you sit and you visualize a calendar, and it's like, how like in a movie there's like a calendar, and it goes waves back, and you go back at least a decade or to to when you were like half the age you are at that point, and you look at that younger self and you imprint that sigil onto their forehead.
Interesting.
Then you come back to present time, and you seal it off. You perform the Watchtower ritual again, and then you move on. But you do that. You're supposed to do that repeatedly to reinforce your magical power. And that that kind of falls in line with going back and having that dialogue with your younger self. It's like.
So I have a question now that we talked about, when I mentioned, you should write down some of these things and turn them into exercises that people can like go back and follow, like a recipe. Did you consider facilitating like online community where you would share your methods and create like a support system for people like you or who would be into...
I'd love to start a support group for people who are in recovery and practice magic.
That would be amazing.
I mean, this is anecdotal, but I've seen that the recovery rate among people into magic tends to be pretty high.
Wow.
Now, I don't have any statistics to show you or any data.
Just based on your
I don't
experience.
have hard. This isn't hard data, but it is experience. I'd like to I encourage anyone who's into magic and is struggling with substance abuse and watching this that recovery rates among magical practitioners tend to be very good.
That's really good news. Okay, so last question. We've gone for a little while. So what is one thing you hope viewers to take away from your story and experience? Okay. In the most general sense, I hope it inspires them to find, as Crowley said, cut their own way through the jungle, because it's a tough thing to navigate. And if this is if this clip, however long it's it ends up being, is going to help someone to either get on or continue with their whatever problem they're trying to solve. And it doesn't even have to be addiction. It's like, let's put this in the category of general problem solving. Also, to anyone who's also into magic, that if magic can have a practical application, this is certainly one of them. So big time.
I just hope this will inspire and uplift.
Certainly, I think certainly inspire and empower people that we all really do have capacity inside of ourselves, but we tell ourselves I'm not good enough or I'm not. So, this is, I would say, a call to kind of get in touch with the part of yourself that is capable. And finally, so how can people reach out to you? Can they reach out to you after watching this video? If they wanna, is that I don't want to put you on the spot, but is there a way for them to? Do you have Instagram, or do you have some social media that's not too private? And if it is private, it's okay. You could always reach out to me, and I can. Well, but I just wanna.
There's my Facebook page,
okay,
I guess.
Is it okay to share that, or not really?
Well, they've got my name in my picture, so that's going to be.
Okay, so it's okay for them.
I won't be difficult to find on Facebook.
Okay, cool. All right. Thank you so much.
You're welcome.
This was wonderful, and I know Enrico for many years.
Yeah, but you give a good interview.
I got a way to really dive deeper and get to know you better, and I appreciate you even more now. Really, I think you did amazing work. So thank you. All right, everybody. Thank you for watching. Bye.
Yeah, thank you, folks.